Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show. Meet the trusted experts who will give you straight answers and will help guide you on the path of later life care. Now, here's your host, founder, caregiver, and CEO, Suzanne Newman.
And welcome back, everyone, to Answers for Elders Radio Network. And we are in part 3 of an amazing hour with Star Bradbury, the author of Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years. And had I had this book before I started caring for my mom, not only would have my life been a lot easier, but so would have hers. And
mine too.
Yeah. So anyway, Star, welcome. I'm so glad you're here from the show. And I know I want to talk about the 2 core principles in your book that you feel can be a crucial guide. Those are important.
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking. And I think as simple as they are, they're profound if you really apply them, because they can be applied as core guiding principles and a framework as you move forward through all kinds of phases of your aging parents who may be 60, 65, or 85. But the principle number 1 is, how can I help maximize and prolong my parents' independence for the longest time?
Love that.
And we'll talk about what that means. And then principle number 2, I call it just-in-time senior planning, JITSP. And just-in-time senior planning is trying to get people more to think about planning for a 3 to 5 year window, Suzanne. I see families who are completely overwhelmed as they imagine the diagnosis of dementia for their mom or dad for 10 years, and they go off into panic mode. And I find it's far more manageable if people try to plan for a 3 to 5 year window with the idea that you're going to be thrown curveballs. You have to expect them. You're going to have to be flexible with that plan and work on something I call the continuous improvement model.
Yeah.
But the maximizing your independence, here's a good question. So, or a short example, I had a client in my consulting business who lived on 5 acres, actually it was 10 acres, out in the country in a beautiful home. He lost his spouse. He was becoming more and more isolated. He was so lonely. Here he's in this beautiful big home. Now, if you were his child, would you say that it was going to maximize his independence and successful aging if he stayed in that house? Even though he might say, I really don't want to leave my house?
Right.
Well, maybe not. That would be time for a conversation about considering moving either closer to a community, closer to you, in a community that was a full service retirement community where there's lots of activities and people. So we saw what isolation and loneliness can do, Suzanne, in COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
We did.
how do you maximize your independence?
Yes.
You have to stay connected to people. That's
well, and I think the other thing, Star, that I want to speak to our listeners, I think our listeners, and at least those that are family caregivers, need to be realistic. You cannot give up your life to care for a loved one just because they want to age in place. If they need help in the home, then you need to rely on professionals. And if you can financially afford that, that's great. But I think one of the things that people tend to do is it's like, well, my dad doesn't want to leave the house, and so I go there every day. Well, that isn't realistic. Learning to set boundaries and say, this is what I'm willing to do, and to adhere to that. I had to learn that lesson. And I know so many family caregivers, if they go down the rabbit hole, then they're not good for anybody.
And they may never get out.
Exactly.
And then what good are you to yourself or your family or even your loved one?
Yeah.
If you're in the hospital first because you've overcommitted and you haven't set
How many
boundaries.
times do we see spouses die before the one that's sick because
it's statistically high.
It's sad.
And I'll tell you what the book title was almost called. It was almost called Your Parents Don't Want to Live with You Either.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Well, and it is true because I think
is
a lot
true.
of times that we want to do right for our parents. And I think for me, what the driver was guilt, because I
Yes.
felt guilty of all the bad things that I did to my mom. She and I never got along. And so I had to make it up, and I had to push my whole life aside because I needed to redeem myself. Well, that doesn't work either.
It does
Because what
not work
happens is you
either.
start feeling resentful. You're
Mhm.
resentful about a lot of people. So obviously, Star, this is a really great way to start. And we're going to talk in our next segment a little bit about options, what they are. And Star and I, we're going to be right back right after this. Successfully Navigating Your Senior Years, available everywhere. We'll be right back. We at Answers for Elders thank you for listening. Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.